Inside El Salvador's mega prison, the world's toughest lockup. Hidden in a valley near the San Vicente volcano, a giant new prison has been built. The Terrorist Confinement Center, CECOT. It's the biggest prison in the Americas, designed to hold over 60,000 gang members. The government constructed it at an astonishing speed in response to a violent crime wave that claimed the lives of 87 people in just 48 hours. For years, El Salvador has struggled with gang violence. Two powerful gangs, MS-13 and Barrio 18, dominated the streets, extorting businesses, controlling neighborhoods, and engaging in brutal acts of violence. These gangs originated in the United States, but spread to El Salvador in the 1990s, thriving in a climate of poverty and unemployment. With limited opportunities for young people, many were drawn into the gang lifestyle, making these criminal organizations even more powerful. Then, on March 27, 2022, everything changed. Following the spike in murders, the government declared a state of emergency. A massive crackdown on gang activity began, leading to the arrests of over 88,000 people. This dramatic shift made El Salvador the most jailed country in the world, with over 2% of its adult population behind bars. Judges were given emergency powers, removing bail options and sending thousands directly to prison without trial. But did this aggressive strategy work? The numbers suggest so. By 2023, El Salvador's murder rate had dropped by 57% in just 6 months, a stunning transformation for a country that once had one of the highest homicide rates in the world. Yet, the crackdown has raised serious questions. What is life like inside this massive prison? How are the inmates treated? And what does this mean for the future of El Salvador? Inside the Terrorist Confinement Center life, CECOT is designed to be as strict and controlled as possible. The facility itself is massive, covering over 165 hectares. High walls, watchtowers, and heavily armed guards ensure no one escapes. There are no windows, no natural light, and no contact with the outside world. Inmates live in harsh conditions, packed into cells with barely enough room to move. They sleep on metal slabs with no mattresses or personal belongings. Privacy is non-existent. Security is at an extreme level. Guards patrol every corner, and prisoners are under constant surveillance by hundreds of cameras. The facility has state-of-the-art technology, including body scanners, facial recognition systems, and X-ray machines to prevent smuggling or escape attempts. Drones patrol the sky, and military checkpoints surround the area. Prisoners are forced to follow strict rules. They are not allowed to speak unless instructed. Any sign of disobedience results in immediate punishment, including physical restraint, solitary confinement, or reduced food rations. There are no visits from family members, no phone calls, and no letters. Inmates are completely cut off from the outside world. How are the prisoners treated? Prisoners are treated as high-risk criminals, regardless of whether they have been convicted or are still awaiting trial. Most are held in isolation with minimal access to basic necessities. Food and water are limited, and medical care is scarce. There are no rehabilitation programs, no educational opportunities, and no job training. The purpose of this prison is not reform, but total confinement. When prisoners are moved within the facility, they are required to crouch with their hands behind their heads, often surrounded by heavily armed guards. This method is meant to prevent communication and maintain total control over the inmates. Human rights organizations have condemned the prison's conditions, calling them inhumane and a violation of basic rights. There are concerns that innocent people may have been arrested and are now subjected to the same extreme treatment as hardened criminals. Critics argue that this kind of mass incarceration may only deepen social problems in the long run. For El Salvador, there is no doubt that the government's crackdown has dramatically reduced crime. Many Salvadorans feel safer and support the aggressive approach taken by President Nayib Bukele. Businesses that once paid extortion money to gangs are now able to operate freely. Families can walk the streets without the same level of fear that gripped the country for decades. However, the long-term impact of this policy remains uncertain. The mass arrests have led to overcrowding in prisons, raising questions about whether such a large number of inmates can be managed effectively. Moreover, some worry that the extreme measures could backfire, leading to future instability if former gang members are released without rehabilitation programs. International human rights organizations, including Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, have expressed deep concerns about the lack of due process. Thousands of individuals were arrested without warrants, and reports suggest that some were taken into custody simply for living in gang-controlled areas, regardless of their involvement in criminal activity. Another concern is what happens when the emergency powers eventually expire. Can El Salvador maintain its progress in reducing crime without resorting to mass incarceration? Will new gangs emerge to replace the old ones? And what happens to the thousands of people locked away in CECOT with no chance of reintegration into society? The future of El Salvador's crime policy. As of now, the prison remains a symbol of the government's zero-tolerance approach. While it has achieved its goal of reducing gang violence, it has also raised serious ethical and legal questions. Supporters argue that El Salvador had no other choice but to take extreme measures to dismantle the gangs that had terrorized the country for decades. Opponents warn that mass incarceration without rehabilitation could create new problems in the future. The world is watching to see what happens next. Will El Salvador become a model for other countries struggling with gang violence? Or will the prison system create new challenges that could undo the progress made so far? One thing is certain: the terrorist confinement center is unlike any other prison in the world. It stands as both a symbol of security and a source of controversy, highlighting the difficult balance between public safety and human rights. For now, El Salvador remains at a crossroads, caught between its past of gang violence and its uncertain future.